Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. We had some technical difficulties, but it looks like we're up and running, hopefully. So I'm Jenny Rowan. I'm the Community Development Director. To my right is Andrew Morris, who's our long-range planner. To my left is Marcy Forbes, our Community Development Engineer. And then in the back we have Jay Stearman. He's our newest planner here. And then we have Lisa as well, and I think she's running around, so you'll see all of us. So today we're here to talk about Johns Pass Village Activity Center, the zoning of the Activity Center. So we have 3 workshops. We already had our first one. This is our second workshop. So what we'll do, we'll have a short presentation, and then we'll go through each character district by character district, and we'll discuss what that is. And then we'll be asking you your input on the heights, on the setbacks, and then any other standards. So a little bit about local land regulations here in Madeira Beach and just Pinellas County in general. So we really have 3 plans that we look at whenever we're looking at, well, what can you do with your land? So with Fort Pinellas, that's the county, they have their countywide plan, and that consists of the countywide rules, their strategies, and then they have a map. So you have a land use category for every single parcel here in Madeira Beach, as well as the county. And then locally, we have 2 different plans. We have the comprehensive plan, where you see the future land use element, and then we have a corresponding map. So that also gives you a designation, your future land use. And that really has the bare bones of uses, your intensity, and then your density. So density is units per acre. So that's hotel units. That's also residential units per acre. And then intensity is a ratio between your lot area and the best way to imagine it is like the air-conditioned square footage. And then on top of that, we have the Code of Ordinances, and that has a lot of information in there. But we're really looking at the land development regulations. You might hear us say LDRs, that's what we're talking about. And within there, we have our zoning districts. And then we have the corresponding zoning map. So whenever you come in and see us in planning, you say, what can I do with my property? Can I build an accessory structure? What are my setbacks? What's my height? All of that's really in the Code of Ordinances and your LDRs. But all 3 of these plans have to correspond with each other. So that's also very important to keep in mind. So we can't have larger regulations, like you can have a larger building than what the county allows. We can be more restrictive, we can't be less restrictive. So this is what these maps look like. So we have the designation of Activity Center now in this area. It's the Johns Pass Village Activity Center. So you can see here in blue, this is the area that we're talking about today, and we're going to be focusing on. And then here on the bottom right is, with our comprehensive plan, our future land use element looks very similar to the countywide plan map, where we have the activity center designation. And now the last piece of this whole process is really going into the zoning categories and changing that to correspond with our comprehensive plan and then the countywide plan. A little bit of history about Madeira Beach in that area. So between the 40s and 80s, many of these buildings were built out in the past. And 83 is really the creation of what we now see as like the modern Madeira Beach zoning. So that has, like what I was saying, the LDRs, the Code of Ordinances. That's where you have your zoning, your use, your height, your setback. And many of these did not reflect what was on the ground, so what was built. In 07 and 08, the city passed some amendments to the comprehensive plan and LDRs that exceeded the countywide plans. So what I said before, we can be more restrictive than the county, we can't be less, so we exceeded what the county allowed. We can't do that. So current staff found these inconsistencies, talked to Fort Pinellas, had public meetings and public hearings on how to proceed. And this area, the Johns Pass Village area that you can see in these two maps, the activity center, those were designated activity center because those were, we had more non-conforming buildings there that needed to be preserved. So that's where the creation of that activity center came from. And so now, like I said before, we're now looking to the zoning to correspond with those different land uses. So why an activity center in that area? It's really to protect that unique character of Johns Pass Village, to assure that any new development is compatible, and assure that we are consistent with the countywide plan, and it's really a proactive instead of reactive approach to planning. So in the LDRs, the land development regulations, we're looking more at zoning. So zoning really has uses. So we have primary, accessory, and special exception use. Special exception use, that's where you have to go to the special magistrate for a use. And then we also have setbacks, building height, which is measured from design flood elevation. We'll go over in just a minute. And there's also special requirements. So in these special requirements, it may look something like, oh, you have to have an extra 5 feet of landscape buffer. If you're next to residential, you have to have an extra so many feet of side setback. If you're this use next to residential, things like that is what we see in the special requirements. And I'll hand it over to Marcy.
So when it comes to height, you notice we referenced the height is measured from DFE, which is design flood elevation. Where that comes from is the entirety of Madeira Beach is a special flood hazard area. So all the locations here have a base flood elevation that we extract from a FEMA map. Majority of Madeira Beach is like 10, 11, 12, and we basically pull that using your address from the map. Then Madeira Beach has a 4-foot freeboard. So that freeboard is designed to take it up a little bit even higher for your finished floor elevations and or depending on where you're at, the bottom of the lowest structural member. So when you see design flood elevation, that's where it comes from. It's your base flood elevation plus the city's 4-foot of freeboard. We measure height beginning at that design flood elevation. So for instance, if you have a design flood elevation of 14 feet, so that means you're in a BFE of 10, we've added the 4-foot of freeboard, and now you're at an elevation of 14 feet, and we start to measure from there. To be clear, when that height is measured, your zero ground is not always zero. Your zero is your elevation, and you could be at an elevation of 6, and then you hit your 14, and then you measure the height from there. We'll have some really good examples later to kind of drive that home, so you kind of can understand how that is. So we do measure height from design flood elevation. And in general, that begins to be about your second story. So your first story typically falls below that and then above that. For commercial, they are allowed to build below, provided they flood-proof it. So you are allowed to use that for commercial and parking and stuff. So what we've also done here is people like to talk stories. So it's, 6 stories, 5 stories, whatever people want. But stories can vary in height. So we typically don't use that to measure how tall something can be. We do like to use feet. We do find that today a story height is greater than what it used to be, so that's why you have higher ceilings and stuff like that. So if you can imagine, a story height here would be like 11 to 14 feet on average is what we can see. And it's also what you don't see too, so you have your ceiling, and then from your ceiling to the top of your next floor, that's where your ductwork can be, your lighting, plumbing, whatever, sprinklers, any of that kind of stuff. So as we go through this conversation, that's what we kind of consider the average story between 11 and 14 feet. When it comes to setbacks, those are the distance we measure from the property line to the outermost exterior edge of the structure at grade. So all components of any building must be within that setback. So whether it's a column, your slab, any portion of your ground floor has to meet the setback, so you can't encroach. So that's how we look at that. As you go into your second story, our code does allow, for instance, a balcony to cantilever 4 feet into the setback. So you do see as you get higher, there are some allowances for patios and decks and stuff like that, but that is still controlled with measurement of depth and stuff like that as compared to your setback and your property line.
All right, now going back to Johns Pass Village Activity Center and then the zoning. So we can see on the left side is your existing zoning map and then the proposed zoning map. So this proposed zoning map really comes from the character districts, which are defined in the special area plan in the comprehensive plan of this area. So obviously we understand that things on Boardwalk looks different, very different than things on Pelican Lane, which looks very different than things on 133rd. So this whole area is broken out into 6 different distinct character districts. So we will be going through each of these character districts and then asking your opinion on setbacks, on height, and then any additional special requirements. So we'll be starting this with Boardwalk. So if you can see on the screen, it's really just a sliver, everything that's along that Boardwalk area. The existing zoning is C2 zoning, with the setbacks are front 20 feet, and that's from Boardwalk Place. The side is 5 feet on one side. The rear or waterfront is none, and the height is 34 feet from design flood elevation. So just what that looks like on an average lot. We just plucked a lot in that area, put in the setbacks and the height. So this is what it could look like just based on the current zoning code. So you have 34 feet measured from that second floor upward to the very top peak of that roof, and then 20 feet in the front and none in the rear, and 5 feet on one side. And we also grabbed an example of current height. So what we did is try to find building plans of what would be the tallest building in each district. So here in Boardwalk, it's near Hubbard's Marina. So we measured from the design flood elevation upward to the tallest peak of the roof is 37 feet and a half inch. And just some pictures of what Boardwalk district looks like and what's unique of that characteristic. So one thing that we will write in the zoning is definitely design guidelines. So keeping that characteristic, what's important of Johns Pass Village. So we'll definitely have that in our zoning as well. So what we'll do now is just ask you to talk amongst yourselves in each group. Look at your worksheets. There's a section for setbacks. There's a section for height and any special requirements. And we'll give you 10 minutes. I'll let you know after 9 minutes that you have 1 more minute to finish up. And then we'll go around the room and just have one person from each table to speak about each one of these. And then myself, Marcy, and Andrew will just go along to each table, see if you have any questions. Yes, Commissioner Kerr.
I just wanted to, the DFE, is that the top of the floor or below that floor? Because that floor could be 4 foot thick.
So if you have a DFE and we pull it, like say we pull it from the map on this example, so their base flood elevation is 11 as plucked from the map. Their design flood elevation is 15. That is where the height measurement starts regardless. So if they wanted to say, oh, our first floor is higher to try and get extra, it doesn't matter. The height always starts at design flood elevation.
I understand, but is that design flood elevation, is that at the bottom of that floor? If the floor is 2 foot thick, is that DFE at the top of that floor or below the floor?
So if you are in coastal A or a velocity zone, your structural member, the lowest structural member, has to be at DFE or above. So the bottom of that structural member has to be at DFE or above. If you're not in coastal A or V, then your finished floor has to be at DFE. So it's different for those two.
So for this entire area, though, it's in that coastal A, is that correct?
Majority of Boardwalk, what we're talking about, yes.
So for assumptions, we'll just say it's at the bottom. The DFE line is before you put your floor on. It does not count the thickness of the floor.
Correct. So they can build, our requirement is you have to be at DFE or above. So however you want to construct that, we will, but at a minimum in this area, your structural member cannot be below, for example, in here, 15 feet.
The DFE.
So yeah,
Okay.
so let's say they wanted to, for whatever reason, they wanted to go higher, that's fine, but their DFE starts, we will start their building height from that point.
Under.
Yeah, it will be at DFE. Is that answering the question?
I think so.
Okay.
I just where that line starts is it's under the structural member.
Correct, for this location.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Thanks, Marcy.
Are we discussing setbacks also?
Correct. So what we're going to have you guys do is focus on height and setbacks and maybe some other criteria that you would like to mention. When you guys, after you guys discuss that, then we're going to come up here and go to each table and get your feedback on what you as a group kind of hashed out for setbacks and height.
Are there any examples of the setbacks in that area?
So we do have what's the current rules are for that. Your next question is going to be, do all the buildings follow those rules? And it varies. So
Okay, that's what I was told I had to do this way. So were there any examples of the setbacks currently in the boardwalk area? Because it looks as if currently we have to change the height restriction to 37.5 to make it legal. So the setbacks, are there any setbacks that have to be determined to make those legal?
So we do have buildings that are legally non-conforming. So when we say legally non-conforming, it means they were built before the current zoning code. And then our code references them, that there's certain allowances that you can do with these legally non-conforming structures. So we can go with the current setbacks. I would not encourage something less than that because we may have a few that didn't meet that setback. We have an example of the height really to show you what that height looks like. We haven't gone parcel through parcel. We're in the middle of doing that, but it's also hard because we do not have building plans of every single building in Madeira Beach. A lot of them are built before the zoning code, goes back before a lot of our records do as well. So it's really hard to determine and give you a specific answer of this does, this doesn't. What we've been doing is going through district by district, looking at the property appraiser website. This is a snippet of the property appraiser website. It shows you kind of where the property lines are, but they're not always accurate. And then trying to measure from, say, Google Earth, if we don't have the building plans, which a lot of them we don't. So we couldn't give you exact, accurate, but we can kind of guesstimate. A lot of them do meet that 5 foot on one side, but there are some that don't. So it's some that do, some that don't. That doesn't give you the greatest answer, but that's what we're doing. Yes.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, do you possibly have something that shows the flood zones, like 10, 11, stuff like that? It might be helpful for some people to be
We
able to
can
look
pull
at
that
it.
up definitely
Yeah,
on the
it might-
screen.
and then you could show them +4, and it might help. I don't know.
That could help. Yeah, when Marcy's getting that up right now. And then just what Marcy said before, grade can vary where you are as well. So keep that in mind when we're talking about
Jenny,
height.
can you pull the example up for Hubbard's Restaurant, please?
Of which one?
Hubbard's Restaurant that you just had up there.
Yes. Which one? Oh, no.
Sorry, my computer's not.
Yeah. Okay, here, let me, oh, great. We were having issues with our computers and internet earlier on multiple laptops, so Looks like it might be frozen again. Okay. We'll just have to restart it. Y'all can talk amongst yourselves, I'll bring that back up.
And while this is pulling up, one thing to think about, we were kind of discussing to give you guys a visual. If you can imagine back when they were doing Boardwalk, if you had an at-grade structure, the 20-foot setback probably comes from them wanting to be able to pull a vehicle up into there. So they said, if the building's 20-foot setback, then we can pull in, park a vehicle to our at-grade structure. So we sometimes think that's where some of these setbacks came from, is being able to park vehicles in there. So you can kind of keep that in mind as you envision now having elevated buildings with potential parking underneath. So those setbacks, don't necessarily have to be what they were. You just don't want them any greater. And we're going to go ahead and start the time now.
Of Hubbard's Marina. Do we want to bring that back up? Nope, it's on PowerPoint.
Yep.
Oh, okay, now it's up.
So the example you have up there, the DFE actually starts just below the window line there. So basically, you're saying that to rebuild, they would actually have to have a higher height, or they have to lower the height of their roof.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So-
Because this was built with, we just got new flood maps in 2021 and then also updated the freeboard. So freeboard used to be 2 feet, now it's 4 feet.
Right. So if we kept it at 34 feet and they had to rebuild, they could actually just adjust the height of their roof.
They could always
The
adjust
peak,
it. Yeah,
right.
it would have to be lower though. You have a good point though that currently it doesn't meet the design flood elevation. This is a coastal A. I think everything on Boardwalk is coastal A. There's a part of it that touches all of Boardwalk. So the lowest horizontal
Right.
member has to be at or above design flood elevation. So
Right.
you would see that
And the
this right here would have to go up to that design flood
And
elevation
the front
15.
setback is considered
Boardwalk
the
Place.
boardwalk facing the street itself.
Exactly. It's a little weird, but yes. So
And
Boardwalk.
the buildings that are on the north side of Boardwalk, what's considered the front of them?
Depends on the legal address.
Okay. So we don't know if it's facing Boardwalk or if we're facing the other way.
Like in the commercial court, the other district
Yeah.
that you're talking about, not in Boardwalk.
No, the ones that are across on the north side of Boardwalk. You got the second set of orange buildings there.
I mean, in
He's talking about the buildings that they're in the other district he's asking about? Yeah, so
yeah, it would be dependent on the legal address. So those, I believe those are Boardwalk Place, but if it's a new
Thank you.
building, yeah.
Hi,
Yes.
Jenny or Marcy. I just want to understand the current setbacks versus current height. Are those the current zones?
Yes, that's in
Okay.
the current zoning.
So current height is different from existing building height.
Yes.
So this is where they're supposed to be now, and we're deciding where we think they should be.
Yes,
And
exactly.
right now, our assignment is to fill out that first line of Boardwalk District.
That's correct. And then we'll go district by district, so
Okay, I
just
just wanna
focus
make
on
sure I understood the
Boardwalk. Yeah,
assignment.
you have it right.
Great, thank you.
And I'm going to start the timer. I know that some of y'all have already started talking. All three of us will be walking around, discussing with each group and just helping out. So I'm going to start that timer and I'll give you a minute notice. We'll do 10 minutes.
But it's the same. I know the one. What are you guys thinking as far as front setback? Take it from the front setback. For those who is currently pointing rear.
So right now then, does that exceed the 20 foot? Does that exceed the 20%?
That's why I have a question about this is current, what's existing. This says current, but this is not existing. It has a different tone. Yeah, I think that.
I think so. If you lower the setback amount, then that road is gonna be, the building's gonna be right there on the street. So that's what I wanna know, like you said, I would like to know how much room in those buildings is to the road.
Current. Yeah, that's what we
Yeah, that's what we need.
like they have high as an existing building.
Well, no, there's not, but there's still a little bit of leeway from the road to the building itself. And then other ones might have a little bit more, I'm curious, because they make it feel closer. Because then you're gonna have an alleyway with buildings on the side, especially when we get down to commercial, traditional village part across the street. So on that one-way road, I just walk on the street.
We could talk about the height of the land. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you can hear that how many times.
So if you're gonna propose height on
So real quick about the height, I just wanted to point out something. What we were showing earlier may not be the highest one on Boardwalk. It's one of the higher ones we have plans for. But, so what I did is we went ahead and pulled up the parking garage, which is directly across, and that shows you that it's 55 feet above DFE. So what you get from the Friendly Fisherman as it begins to transition across Hooters, Bubba Gump's, and over to the boardwalk, you probably will see like an increase in height for some of their architectural features and stuff. So I just want to be clear, you're looking in that area from about the 37 mark that we showed earlier to 55 from DFE along the parking garage, if that makes sense. So you kind of have some transitioning and architectural features that are there. Right, we haven't talked about that. But I think, like, I'm saying, like, the floor would be the same, but we'll say what now?
The mechanical units and architectural details are determined.
Correct. And some of there's some caveats around the architectural features and the tops of stairs and elevators for building heights as well. So just that you guys understand that as well. So. Okay, you guys have about 1 more minute, and then we're going to start asking you guys some questions.
All right, I know we went a few minutes over, but we will be gathering everybody's input on, Marcy will have it up here. Perfect. Oh. Oh. And we will ask just one person from each table to speak about what you discussed in your table. We'll go through height, setbacks, and then any other regulations. And I'm going to give this microphone. And then speak into the microphone as well. Lisa and Jay will be coming around with the microphones.
Oh. We have 2 mics now.
Hello? Okay, perfect. Okay, as we can start at this table first. Who wants to be the speaker? Get out of the way of the presentation.
So I'm not going to give our reasons, I'm just going to give you our numbers, all right?
Okay.
So for the proposed front setback and use, we agreed on 5 feet. For the proposed setback and use, we proposed 0 feet. For the proposed rear setback and use, we proposed 0 feet. For the proposed height in feet, we maintained 37 feet, 0.5 inches. So that the existing, the building that is at that height can remain that height, and none of the others can go any higher. The only additional comments we had is that we would maintain, which I think is the goal of this anyway, maintain a walking-friendly area.
Focus on pedestrian-friendly development, okay.
Right.
And design. Perfect, thank you. All right, next table in the back there, who will
like
be
to
your
speak for this table?
spokesperson?
They're still confused. Did you have questions?
Question, on the boardwalk, will they have to update the width of it to maintain more of a traffic flow on the boardwalk itself?
So the boardwalk is owned and maintained by the city, so that's off of the property line. The property line is like where the seawall is, so it doesn't go to the boardwalk.
If they expand it to update it, will that affect the setback eventually?
We wouldn't be expanding over to, say if that did happen, we wouldn't go into people's property. Okay, and did y'all want to talk about your opinions on the height and setbacks? Did
They
y'all
said they
discuss-
didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No. So we're going to go to this table.
Okay, next table.
Okay, I was put in charge of this table for talking. Okay, so we came up with, basically, we were good with what the current setbacks are. The 20 in the front, none on the rear, 5 on the side. On which would be one side.
Did they change the sides? So you're completely saying the same, or did you alter it?
Yes, keeping the same, which would be continuous structure. If there's like nothing there now, we're good with that.
Okay,
And then the height, we agree with the 34 feet. And
34,
I guess
okay.
the 37.5 would have to be non-compliant and would stay non-compliant.
okay. Perfect. Any other special regulations or that you discussed or anything important in this area? No? Okay.
You guys next? Okay, we, on the street side, we had a little bit of a back and forth between 0 and 5 feet.
Okay.
The business people like the idea of 0 and being able to rebuild to the road, and the pedestrians like the idea of 5 feet
5
and being
feet.
able to walk. Setbacks on the side, we went with 0. On the rear, we went with 0. And the proposed height, we were okay with it going up to the 37 and a half that's existing.
Okay.
And the only additional comment was no taller than that.
Perfect.
Or you're gonna have a couple of short floors or short attics, something's not gonna be the same as it is now.
All right, next table, Mr. Edwards.
For the boardwalk, we were looking at keeping the front setback as is at 20 feet. Is that the consensus, I believe?
Okay.
There would not be any side setback, would be 0.
Okay.
And the rear setback stays the same as 0. We're still having a little discussion on the height, and can we have 1 second?
Okay.
Are we thinking about future build? Property owners may want to build up. 37 feet's difficult to get more than two floors.
I guess the consensus is go to 37 feet.
37, okay. But y'all were discussing 34 or 37. That was kind of,
It was between those
okay.
two.
We can put that too. They decided 37, but there was also discussions of 34. So they weren't unanimous. Any other qualities or anything else that is just important to note in this area? Walkability. Thank you. Okay, great. And we're going to move on to the next district. So it'll be very similar to what we just did, except for we're going to the commercial core district. So here's where we have the parking garage, and then some larger buildings. So this is existing C1 zoning, so it's a different zoning district. These setbacks in the front, now all of these are from the property line, so keep that in mind. The front is none, side is 10 feet on one side, the rear is 25 feet, and the height is 34 feet from design flood elevation. And here's some examples using different size lots of what that could look like based just on the zoning code. So we have 34, generally starts at the second floor. I remember what Marcy said before, any commercial you can flood-proof. If you're residential, you cannot flood-proof that ground floor. It has the setbacks here, the height. And then the tallest building that we could find, which I believe is accurate, is the parking garage. So you can see in this picture, the design flood elevation being 14, and then above that is 55 feet and 6.5 inches, so 55.5 feet. And then just some pictures of current buildings in that area. So just like before, we'll give you 10 minutes. I'll give you 1 minute before, just notifying you that you have 1 more minute. And then we'll go around just like what we did. Hello? Okay, we're going to give one more minute and then we'll start discussion. All right, we're going to start going around to all the tables. If we could start at this end. Jay or Lisa, could you bring the microphone around to this table? Over here. Yes.
I don't know if we want to share this with people, 'cause it came up on Saturday, but
Okay, so starting at this table, who will be your spokesperson? Are you not ready yet? You're hashing it out. Okay, then we'll start at this table in the back here.
Okay.
All right.
Are we gonna have you? There we go.
So, oh, All right, our proposed front setback is based on them keeping the current 10-foot sidewalk, and we put 0.
Okay,
But if
so
you don't count the city's sidewalk, because that was the
discussion
the
that you
discussion
had.
is, do the sidewalks count? So if the sidewalk is in place, we're okay with 0. Side setback, current, we're okay with the current. Same thing with the rear. And right now, we're going with are we going with the 55? We were going with the 55 on the height. The only comment we had, some of us, was no rooftop bar.
All right, next table.
All right, there you go, Chuck. They're still talking? Are you guys ready?
All right, we want to keep the height at 34 foot, which is currently existing, and the rear setback at 25 and the side at 10 on one side only. No change in setback on contiguous properties, 10 foot on one side, and that's what we have.
What was the front again?
The front was none.
None, okay, thank you. All right, next table. Are y'all ready?
Yeah, a lot of discussion still
Good.
ensuing.
Okay.
But at the current conversation is front setback is at 10 feet to match the rear setback, 10 feet.
So 10
that
and 10.
Because 10 and 10, because some businesses face one way, some businesses face the other way. We feel like 10 feet would give some symmetry
uniformity.
on both sides, uniformity on both sides.
Okay.
As far as side setbacks, we couldn't come up with a number, but we did agree that it should accommodate pedestrian use, whatever that side
Okay.
setback is.
And what, I'm just going to bring up from the last workshop, something that kept being brought up is, say, if your lot is larger than half an acre, or your lot is wider than 50 feet, then maybe you would have a larger side setback,
Right.
something like that. So just throwing that out there is,
So height, we looked at what's coming up in 2 sessions is going to be the low intensity mixed use at 44 feet. And we thought if the residential mixed use can go to 44, we feel like the commercial core should at least go to 44. And that's not a unanimous decision.
okay.
Yeah.
So 44 for low intensity or 44 for
And
this
then-
district?
Say that again?
For this
This
district?
district.
Okay,
To match that one.
to match it, okay.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure we
And then as far
got
as
it
additional
right.
comments, we're going to say again, maintain pedestrian friendly design and design consistent with
guidelines.
what's going on already.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Maintain that. We're just going to keep saying that. Right.
Gotcha. All right, and which tables? I think these 2 tables. So whoever's ready.
Are you guys ready? All right, there you go.
Okay, so what we finally have come up with is we figure we want a 10-foot front setback. And since we're giving up some of that, we'll go 20 on the rear. Side setback, a 10-foot needs to be split.
So 10-foot total?
Yes.
Okay,
Total. 10-foot total, fine, but it needs to be split. And I would say minimum of 3 and 7.
all right. Did we get height?
Oh, and height?
Yeah.
34.
34, okay.
34 with the exception of what is existing stays, existing.
Any additional standards? I know y'all were talking about landscaping and drainage and
Well,
things
it
of
got
that.
into an issue of like, some of the people on the table here don't know what's existing, but like having a zero frontage, I said, okay, so the city's got property, so you do have some sidewalks, so it would be just going up to the edge of their property. But what I don't want to see again is like Sweet Brunette, where that's, I guess, is a good idea of a zero setback, where the corner of 140th and Gulf, the building is right on, I would say, the property line, which makes it very dangerous for pulling out.
And one thing we discussed at the previous workshop is possibly having, say, the second floor have a different setback, third floor, different setback. So, or say, oh, you're 3 stories, so your first floor can be 0, your second and higher floors can be 10 or something.
Exactly, and that's
that.
like, I guess, well, the parking garage,
Yeah.
where that first floor has, you've got your walkability, and then the second floor is out more, and, if that's going to the property edge, that's potentially okay, but keeping your line of sight safe.
So you don't have a monolithic building
Exactly,
right next to.
yes.
One thing I've been doing, because of these meetings, is trying to see what buildings down in John's Pass Activity Center and in other parts of the city had the Board of Adjustment do a variance. I know the building with Sweet Brunette was one of the ones that did have, that these were done in the early 2000s, way before our time, but it's just a check. But I remember seeing that was one of the buildings that had variances done.
All right, and our last table?
We're looking at the front setback being 10 feet, 0 with the rear. And for side setback, we're probably looking at 5, but if it was like a continuous number of stores like in the traditional, you could 0, but I know you can't have it both ways. But if
Yeah.
you're having some type of other thing where you have separate buildings, then you probably should have 5 feet from them, between them.
Okay.
And then for the height, we want to keep it with the current height of 34 feet DFE.
All right. Okay, I think that was all the tables. And, okay, to stick on time, we'll still do 10 minutes, but I'll be very firm with it. So, the Johns Pass Resort, so now we're going across Gulf Boulevard, and we're looking at the R3 zoning district that we see up and down Gulf Boulevard. So as you can see here on the slide, there's a little bit of variation between the use and how wide the lots are. So single family to triplex is 20 feet in the front. Multifamily hotel commercial is 25 feet in the front. Side yard setbacks, if you're single family to triplex, if you're less than 50 feet wide, you're going to have 5 feet on both sides. If you're those single family to triplex, you're wider than 50 feet. Then, as well as multifamily hotel and commercial, you'll have 10 feet on both sides. The rear is 25 feet, or if your property is along the beach, you'll have the the CCCL line, which I'll show you in the next slide. And you can build right on that line. The height from DFE is 44 feet. And there is that special requirement that if hotels or multifamily abuts a residential, an additional 5 foot of setback is required. So here's a CCCL. It's that lime green line. So that only applies if your property is on the beach. Otherwise, it's going to be that 25-foot setback. So on a larger lot, this might be what the building looks like. We're not accounting for ISR. We're just trying to give you an idea of the setbacks. And then what Marcy kind of talked about in the height, it can really vary on how high your stories are. We see an average of about 11 to 14 or 10 to 14 feet for each story. We're seeing more and more as the years go on. So with 44 feet, you might have 3 stories over parking, or you might have 4 stories over parking, just to kind of give you an idea of what that is. And then here's one of the older building plans of what we could find. This is Beach Place. So from the design flood elevation, the current design flood elevation, it's 50 feet and 8¼ inches. And then mechanical units can exceed that height. So we're really measuring from the top of that roof structure right there. An example on smaller lots, because we do have smaller lots, some single-family, duplex, triplexes in this area. So we also want to make sure that we recognize that, protect these properties. So this is what these setbacks look like on a smaller lot. And just some pictures of that district. How we have a variation of larger condo buildings and then smaller properties as well. All right, I'm going to start the timer now and give you 10 minutes. In actual Okay, one more minute, so just wrap it up, and then we'll be going around. All right, and now we will start going around. Okay. Does this table want to start?
Are y'all ready?
No? Are y'all ready? Okay. Dear Lisa, okay, perfect.
Okay, we're talking now about John's Pass Resort area, district, and we felt like we wanted to maintain the current setbacks all the way across the board. You can ask any of my colleagues here for their reasons for that, but that's what we decided, with the stipulation in the additional standards that we include: accommodate smaller properties to rebuild current footprint regardless of reason, which means not just if they're destroyed in a hurricane. For any reason, they can rebuild in their current footprint for smaller properties, right? So that was something we wanted to accommodate with. I don't know that I have the expertise to explain it, but
I don't need it. People probably don't know what they're talking about.
currently, well, Jenny, could you explain that 50% thing that you just explained so well?
Yes, it's very complicated, so I'll try. So we do have a section in our code that addresses non-conforming properties. So this is legally non-conforming. So if your building was built before the current zoning codes, you have certain allowances of what you can do. And what we were discussing at this table is if a non-conforming structure is damaged by fire, natural elements, or forces greater to 50% of its market value, it has to meet the current zoning codes. So if you have some damage to your home that's over 50%, you have to meet the current zoning requirements. Now, if you have a catastrophic loss, where it's a declaration of a disaster, say a hurricane, and that declaration can come from the Board of Commissioners, it can come from the county commissioners, it can come from the state or federal levels, then you have other allowances where, depending on the type of property, you can build back to the same setbacks. Some of them allow for the same footprint, some of them do not. So it really depends on the type of use. Say for commercial, even if there is a hurricane in our code, you have to meet the height, you have to meet the same floor area ratio.
And what we were stipulating is that rather than the 50-50 rule, a property owner could decide for any reason to build back on their original footprint.
Something to accommodate those
The
smaller lots.
Smaller lots.
Oh, height. We didn't talk about height. Did we? Oh, I must have missed it.
Maintain existing, all the way across the board.
Existing in the code, so that 44? Or, okay, 50. So what's built there? Then 50?
Existing.
Existing built, so 50. Okay. Perfect. And we're still looking through building plans. Like I said before, a lot of these buildings were built for this current zoning code. And there's some that we cannot find building plans for. And so we're in the process of seeing which ones we can find building plans for. And then anything taller, we're going to work with our building official to get those heights as well. So, all right, next table.
Okay, batter up. So we would like to keep everything exactly the same, although I do like Commissioner Tagliarini's comments about the smaller structures. I think that globally, we're looking out for everybody with this, but
Yes.
keep everything at its current height and setbacks.
As it was built or as it is in our code?
No, as it is in the code.
The code, okay. Yes, we always have to be specific about that.
Yes,
So, okay, perfect.
absolutely.
We got it. All right, next table.
Yes, we agree with both other tables exactly in terms of the setbacks, good. Current height being 44, same, but then also the build back to existing. Oh, no, to existing code.
To the standards. Okay. It has to be the 44.
If it gets if it's 60 and gets demolished, it's got to go back to 44.
Okay.
So we have some kind of conformity.
All right. Got it. Next table.
So for setbacks, we were fine with the current. And with the proposed height, we basically, because we were looking even above at the ones we didn't talk about, the 44 feet, we just thought that the 44 should be the new 50.
Okay.
Because of what you were saying about the taller ceiling heights and the foot needed for the 1.5 feet for the rebuild. So we thought 50 basically is the new 44.
Okay. 50 feet. All right. All right, next table.
We're, want to keep the existing code as it is, with 44 feet being the highest DFE.
Okay. And setbacks too. Makes
Setbacks all
sense.
the same.
Okay. All right. That is everyone. We will go to the next. Okay, so now we're jumping back across to Pelican Lane, the low-intensity mixed use. So this is R3, so you have the exact same zoning. So I'm not going to go through that just because I know we're running low on time. Here's an example based on, we plucked one of the R3 lots over here in Pelican and imposed those setbacks that are in our code right now. And then here's an example of that 44 feet that's being built back there. And some photos of what is on Pelican now. All right, I will start the timer. Okay, I know we're running, our time is over, but if you can stay, we would love for you to stay. We're going to go through the low intensity mixed use, and we will start, is this table ready? Do you have to go? Oh, I'm sorry.
If you guys have your worksheets, though, we'd love to keep those.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll start over here. We'll try and do the last few quickly. And if you have to leave, you can always email us, come by, talk to us. We're here. And then we do have another workshop on Saturday, so of course everyone is welcome to attend that. All right, so we'll start.
They don't,
Okay. We got that worksheet. He and David handed us the worksheet.
Okay, so next table.
We would like to keep everything to current code.
All right. Next.
Okay, we've determined that since this is going to be a new code, do away with, obviously, the R3, and it's only going to be for this area. So it's no need for the CCCL. And front setbacks, 20, side setbacks, 5, because I believe all those properties are 40 foot, so it would be consistent with that. Rear setback, 25, and eliminate the CCCL. And height, 34 foot as opposed to 44.
All right. Great. Next table.
We went with current setbacks and current height.
Okay. Last table. I think the mic's coming to you.
After considerable discussion, they said just go ahead and keep the existing ordinances.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So now we're jumping to the traditional village. So back to C1 zoning, which is more focused on the commercial development. Setbacks in this zone, front are none, side 10 feet on one side, rear is 25 feet, and the height is 34 from DFE. So here's a few examples of what that could look like. And then one of the few building plans that we could find was of this tower on the brewery, near the brewery. And so from DFE, that's 31 feet, 1 3/4 inch. So I'll just say 31 feet and 2 inches from DFE to the very top of that. All right. So the finished floor elevation, so grade is around 6 feet, 6 feet here. And then it looks like the base flood elevation in this area is 10 feet. And then our freeboard's 4 feet, so starting there. Okay, the timer's going. And then we'll have one more district after this. I appreciate everybody staying, who can stay. And if you have to leave, feel free to fill out the worksheet with any additional comments, and we'll definitely collect those.
city-owned lot in Triangle about
All right. Is everybody ready? Trying to move it along. We have one more district after this, so can start. Where's the microphone? Yeah. You ready? Okay.
We were recommending just to keep with
Okay.
the current setbacks and what's proposed. Yeah, no
Correct.
changes to.
No changes. And same for height, no changes? Okay. All right, next table. Who's ready?
Are y'all ready?
Are they ready?
Well, after considerable discussion, we'd like to keep everything the way it is now with the current laws and ordinances.
Okay, so same as the previous table. Okay. And perfect.
We're the same way. I mean, especially keep all the numbers like they are, and especially with the idea of the tower only being 31, feet tall. So everything looks good there for traditional village.
All right, thank you.
So for the front setback, we're staying with current. For the side, we were going with 0 only, so in event of hurricane, it could be rebuilt the way it is. We like the way it looks with all the stores touching. Rear side setback current and 34 on the height.
All right. And last table.
We're looking, we're looking at the front as no setback, the rear being 25, but being able to cantilever the second floor out further to allow parking and maybe additional floor space for the stores.
Okay.
And
That's a good
then
idea.
for the side setbacks, it would be 0 along the line, but on the 2 outer stores on each corner, having a 5-foot setback on that.
Okay.
Actually, it might be 10. I guess it would depend on the visibility triangle for cars turning.
Yes, and we always keep that
Right.
in account, so you have to meet that visibility triangle. All right. Great. Yes, we like that one. Height the same, is that right? 34? $34. Okay, keep these same. All right, last one. Transitional district. We have a lot of different zoning categories in this district. So anything on the beach side is going to be the R3, and we do have one existing PD zoning, which is Barefoot Beach. So with PD zoning, they were allowed to go higher than the regulations. So you'll see that in a minute. And then on the east side, we do have C3 zoning, C4 zoning, and then there's a little sliver that is R2 zoning. And here are the setbacks. I don't want to dwell on it too long. Here's examples of the C3 and C4 zoning. They're very similar. Front yard, 25 feet from the property line. Side depends on how wide your property is. So it's either 10 feet is the lowest. So if you have a wider, wider lot, then it's going to be 33% of the width. And then the rear yard, if you're in the C3 zoning, is going to be 10 feet. If you're in C4, it's 18 feet. And then the height is 34 to 44 feet. And that variation in the C3 is based on use. And then examples of the R3 zoning, you've seen this before. Just some examples of what that looks like. The R2 looks similar. The height is 40 feet, so a little smaller. But like I said, there's just one little sliver that is R2. And then another example of R3 on a larger lot. And then here is Barefoot Beach. Like I said, this was done with a PD zoning. So they were allowed to go exceed that height when they went to the BOC and got that approval. So just for reference of what that looks like, their height is 63 feet, 7 inches. And then Madeira Bay across the street is also higher. I believe it's higher than Barefoot Beach, about the same height though. And they got a variance. So that was also another special exception that allowed them to get higher than what was allowed. And now in the current code, we don't allow additional height through that variance process. And then some pictures of what is in that transitional district. So similar to Johns Pass Resort District, you do have larger lots, larger buildings, but then you also have single-family homes, and you have smaller lots, smaller buildings, duplexes, single-family. So keep that in mind when you go through the setbacks and height. And then we also have other, so maybe there's special exceptions or something special that we could write in the code to really protect those single-family homes. All right, and I will put on the timer, and this is the last district. Okay, we are going to go around and talk about height setbacks and others. Is this table ready? Yeah, y'all are ready? Okay. Marcy. Okay. Whoever your spokesperson is. Mayor?
Good morning. With the transitional, we'd like to leave everything the way it is with the current code, that everybody's in agreement with that.
Okay. Next table. Y'all ready?
Yeah, quick and simple one, ditto. Yeah, we're good with all the codes and good luck trying to get it all together
Thank you.
under one area.
So officially now, meet current code is referred to as MC squared.
Okay, well, we're kind of torn on that because where we're torn on the setbacks is some of those houses, because it's such a mixed area, on the Gulf Lane side, there are some where there's a house in the front and a house on the beach side, all on the beach side of Gulf Lane. So under current code, the people who have a house and their own address, separate from their neighbor right behind them, could not rebuild their house if a hurricane came. So how do you account for something like that if you have a 20-foot setback and they're currently built on the road? Like, you know what I'm saying? There's two houses to the west of Gulf Lane. So
Okay.
if something happened there, there has to be a way to account for them not losing a home and not being able to rebuild their home.
So we'll have the same comment to
So
accommodate
existing
smaller
footprint,
properties.
yes, smaller property and existing footprint on that, because someone could theoretically not be able to build their entire house. So that's one thing. Our height, we were going with 50 just for the same reason as the 44
Okay.
because of the ceiling height. The other thing we want put in there is no amplified music, because this is a transitional and there are hotels and there are no amplified music to be heard beyond 50 feet of the property line, no rooftop bars.
All right.
You know, we want this to be maintained residential.
And
But we
that's
want the
definitely-
residents to be
yes.
a priority over commercial
Perfect.
buildings.
Okay. And I was just going to say that is something that we can write in the zoning code, the uses, and then special exception uses and things of that nature. So, perfect.
Jenny, the one other thing that I kind of brought up, talked to him, because some of the issues I was having, is whether or not there might be able to be something, it could be that we could rebuild to the existing setback versus footprint, because like with mine, where we have that goofy little jog,
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking a couple feet, and it kind of screws up the building.
Yeah.
And it's not this way, so it's extended it's to the existing
Yeah.
setback versus footprint.
Okay. All right, last table in the last district.
Just give it to Andrew.
I'm not sure we have consensus on this yet. Can we have
Okay.
one more minute, please?
Okay. Or you can talk about what you're going through, the discussions.
I think for the R3, the front and rear setbacks are fine, and the side setback, you know, so we're fine with there. We're looking at the height, and, you know, we've talked about history. Before, you have a lot of buildings that would not be more than 44 feet in height, where you used to have parking and 3 floors above that, and which is what like the Madeira Beach Motel is, at the highest level. And there's a lot of buildings. So basically, if you had houses, you know, you're looking at parking in 3 floors, which is plenty in that area there. So my recommendation, and I haven't heard too much
Not
from my
everybody- okay.
partners here as to what they are looking at. So I don't know if you have any other opinion here. So I would say not DFE, but overall height from grade
From
would be
grade.
44.
something
Right.
higher.
Yeah, if you're outside the activity center, you can build taller if you want, but that's what we're looking at there. I think that, I don't know, C3 and C4, I don't really have an opinion unless you all have anything on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, on the smaller house, the houses, similar to what they.
So maybe you could say, because I know you were talking about homes, maybe you could have like a use. We see that in, I believe it's C3 or C4. Oh, C4. Commercial has 34 feet from DFE, multifamily hotels 44. So maybe you could have something like that. If you're single family to triplex, you could build to a height of 30. If you're something else, then it could be 40. Is that kind of what you were talking about, or just across the board?
So we were talking more about just the smaller houses that don't meet setbacks, similar to what one of the other tables was saying, that they would be able to build back to the current setbacks on the smaller
Protecting
lots.
those smaller.
Protecting, right. So more tied to size of property and type of property.
Use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to require the setbacks for a 40-foot wide piece of property would be difficult if someone had to rebuild back a house or what have you.
Okay, so really protecting those smaller lots to build back.
Still kind of discussing the height. I guess the thing is like throughout the city, so with the R3 zoning district and in the C3, we do allow for 44 feet from DFE right now throughout the city. So kind of to go more restrictive than that would mean that it would attract development away from John's Pass.
The only problem is this is the only area where you have single-family residences that are on the beach. All down the beach, you might have, I think there's 3 places that have residential. But this is the only place where you have single-family or a duplex at most residentially. You might say it's an R3, but that's why we're trying to keep that family feel to it.
We lock it behind like a quarter acre of land, like if you have a quarter acre of land, you can go to 44 feet from DFE, but if you have less than a quarter acre, you're more restricted, like to 34 feet above DFE. So that area is like mostly built out. So the thing is, if you required a quarter acre, I don't think there's a quarter acre well, I'd have to measure it down there, but it would make sure that like on those smaller single family lots, you wouldn't be able to build to 44 feet, which is what your concern is, someone building a very tall next to your house, which you don't want. So if you put it behind an acreage threshold, then someone would have to buy up multiple lots to be able to build to the 44 feet above DFE. Like if we had it like a threshold to reach that, would that be better to avoid having that right on top of someone's house?
No, because if you did something like that, they could still, with the side setbacks, be bumping right up next to a residence. So
still be
if you
pretty
had someone
close.
buy up a quarter an acre or half acre, and they want to move with a side setback of only 10 feet, which is what Barefoot Beach tried to do with the planned development, they were bumping right up next to a couple residential places there, and we were going to have to sue them to push them back into the center of their lot. So that's my concern on that issue.
We require additional setback based on lot size. So I mean, we could do it based on height too. Like if you're 44 feet above DFE, you need at least.
Well, you're saying DFE. Again, I'm talking about 44 at ground level.
grade.
So basically, you'd be, maybe 30 feet above DFE.
Well, that's what I was trying to say is you have 2 height standards based on lot size. So you would still, because what would worry me if you make that more restrictive, then it'll just, because we allow for like someone to do like and there's houses abutting some certain lots, but I think if like the amount of land required, if you require additional setback, that would reduce the issue and maybe prohibit rooftop uses to just being utility access.
We're also talking about the residents on the east side of Gulf Boulevard. You have those along 131st there, I believe it is. Those are 3 stories. You have parking garage and you have 2 stories. They're townhomes, basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about what we're talking about. We're trying to go ahead and match up what we have there as well as on the west side for residential families.
Okay. So maybe we can write 44 from grade, do you have that? Oh.
I mean, should we
already
just do
have that. Okay.
34 from DFE then?
And
just
then
reduce it
something like
to be
30,
consistent?
34 from DFE.
Yeah, because it might get confusing to have at grade for one area and then.
And then we have protection for, okay. Great. Okay. And that is all that we have. We'll be around if you have any additional questions or comments. And we'll be bringing all of this to our BOC and Planning Commission. Probably not this BOC will have everything compiled, but definitely the one after, and go from there. Thank you. Really appreciate everybody coming out and staying later too.